taking your energy. They're taking your energy. You're getting nothing in return. Nothing, 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 nothing.
This post is Break the Cycle, and I published it Monday, September 9th, 2013. And it's somewhat long, and I'll get to it. I'll try to go through it here in a minute, but I just want to mention that, like, way before I knew of Kenneth Grant, Aleister Crowley, or any of this, a friend had, told me about the Krill papers, I think in, 8th grade, and I ended up printing them out at school and just, read them whenever I could to see what the hell it was all about, and because it seemed really interesting, especially the whole Goblin universe, and I found that book, and Colin Wilson wrote the foreword to it, and he has a lot of books, and so it's just funny because the word krill ends up coming up in Kenneth Grant's books, like The Rite of the Kurla Cell or Krilla Cell, and he connects it to the word Korlo, which is like wheel or circle, and this whole concept, it connects to Krim and Kali, and just all these weird connections, like when you read this chapter and then Outer Gateways, he also talks about how he had taken this name like Kral Nia, and he wrote this thing called the Chronicles of Kral or Krill Nia, and it connects to Kof Nia, but then Krill, and I don't know, it's just really odd, and supposedly Bill Cooper is the one who came up with this, and you'd have to read it. I'm not going to read the whole thing because it's pretty long. I know that it's just a compilation of all sorts of weird information, but at the same time there's something odd about the synchronicity regarding all this stuff, especially again when it seems like people are not aware at the time, we're all just breaks in the wall, so to speak. Again, looking at it now at this point in history, being able to look back at all the actual perspective of things, there's a lot to be said about some of it. But anyway, I was also going to mention that this whole thing in Outer Gateways, the double voice behind Liber AL, and basically someone has stressed to me the importance of basically the idea that the Book of the Law is, I don't know how to even talk about it. It's just there's something in or behind the Book of the Law that's I don't know, someone had told me that they had a dream that the Book of the Law, they said something about it being as it was falsely written. And then there's also this guy named Amado Crowley who wrote a few books, The Riddle of Aleister Crowley, The Wrath of Aleister Crowley, and the book, he says that there's this secret book of the law or something called the Book of Desolation. And to me, that's a metaphor on a lot of deep levels for, I don't know how to explain it. It's just the Book of Desolation being this sort of I don't know, because in Outer Gateways, Kenneth Grant says even that the Book of the Law, the Necronomicon, the Book of Zion, all of these are attempts at trying to earth or translate this sort of astral or dream grimoire that recurs in a lot of people's, it's an archetypal book of life sort of thing, or book of secrets, book of shadows. And from what I can tell, from what I personally see and have found, is that the whole Gematria database seems to be a sort of natural astral holographic grimoire, what Kenneth Grant has called the primal grimoire. And I'm not sure why this won't go away, but and he talks in Outer Gateways a lot about the concept of basically the beetle, the egg or the shell, the shells, the clothoth, and how, in a way, I don't know, just regarding the Book of the Law, it taps back into this ancient knowledge of, again, I was, or like AI, and was in Egyptian, the was scepter. It's basically a symbol of power. So the AI, you know, it's basically the outer one, or the overlords, the which is what this whole thing talks about. So, uh, hold on. Also, in this other chapter, the magical formula of Silba, here he talks about the Iblis again, and it being connected to 107, the egg. Also, the whole concept of waking, dreaming, and sleeping, or deep sleep. And then the fourth zone, or fourth state of Turiya, it connects with that whole number of 107 and XYZ and Ananda, the bliss. And I don't know, there's just a lot of connections, and Kenneth Grant was trying his hardest, it seems, to try and like convey this. And yeah, there's certain things that I think he didn't see that I've found that kind of take it further. And I don't know, but Beyond the Mauve Zone is interesting. What he's it took me a while to understand really what the Curlicell is, or what is or could be, but it's basically like, it reminds me of, again, whatever the whole concept of these Vril, or these energy beings. The energy body itself is the energy body and the aura, and 107 again being that egg and this sort of like data field. To me, I don't know, it's there is a certain interest in this particular field of study, or research, and again, that's why it connects to like Wilhelm Reich and the body electric, that whole theory. And again, how 666 electric, this energy body in the mind, and how it can be quantified, but only if you consider it in this sort of like, what I say holographic, but really 4D or 5D perspective, which it's hard to, again, linguistically talk about, because there's a lot there's just a lot of elements involved. But I don't know, I want to read this whole Curlicell chapter, but it's kind of long. So again, with this post itself, I just would say try to read this. Consider the numbers that it talks about, though, especially 511 and 510, because there's like something to do with these numbers and AI. And again, just think of how 666 minus 511 is 155, and that all the things that relates to. And then 510 is also related, is 510 is Resh, and then also Phi in Greek. And there's a lot to these numbers and their attributions. And I haven't worked it all out yet, but it is interesting that Kenneth Grant himself like talks about this, and he does tie it back to even older concepts. Like if you read the books of Gerald Massey, and again the Tibetan books, or books about Tibet, and there's a lot of overlap in these seemingly unconnected subjects, and religions and technologies, and it's a lot to go over, but that's why I try to go over it like in little bits at a time. So let's start reading Break the Cycle. And I also want to say that every time I read one of these blog posts, certain things like come up relating to it, or maybe not exactly relating to what's in it, but certain things that I can see as relevant because of basically the fact that I'm focusing on whatever it is that each blog post is about. And so it's interesting though to see like news articles and events and stuff. And I noticed that happen as I would write them myself. Like, it was kind of odd. I'm not saying every time there is something, and but sometimes it's like undeniable. So, furthering the web that has thus far been spun, I want to go into a subject that has been expanded upon very little since its appearance in the 1999 publication Beyond the Mauve Zone by Kenneth Grant. This article is in regard to Chapter 6 of that book, The Right of the Curlicell, which deals with a broad array of subjects which can be quite difficult to keep up with if not familiar with the previous material in Grant's trilogies. The word Kurla is not mentioned anywhere previously in the Typhonian trilogies, or anywhere else to my knowledge. Evidently, Grant gets it from the work of Geoffrey Evans, Freder Kefra Ma Ost, 481, and Ruth Keenan Evans, Sor Mayat, 352, whose work, Liber 251, is briefly mentioned and hitherto unpublished. At the outset of the chapter, Grant mentions that the word Kurla is suggestive of the Tibetan Korlo, which means wheel, round, samsara, and is the Tibetan word for the Sanskrit chakra. It will here be seen that this is more than a mere suggestion. Quoting from Beyond the Mauve Zone, he says, "The Evans-Keenan rite here described provides a simple method, simple that is, in regard to components, for contact with non-terrestrial entities via the cosmosexual magic of the Ophidian current. As in the case of the Sri Chakra, the Curlicell is, fundamentally, a battery of limitless potential. A cognate rite of some antiquity survives in the Tibetan Korlo rite, and the names of both of these procedures suggest an affinity of the methods used." Grant goes on to say, "The nature of these methods is best understood by a Kabbalistic analysis of the designation of Kurla." So basically by analyzing the numerology and its connections, which is in some ways helpful to understand something. Actually looking at the numbers, the numerology of things helps to, again, see and think in sort of like numerical terms or language. 251, which is the number of Vril, the magical force associated with the coming race or eon, about which Bulwer Lytton wrote in his novel of that name. Vril, or Uriel, was the angelic name worn as a lamen by the mage Abramelin during his transaction with spiritual beings. Vril is a phonetic permutation of Hrilyu, an expression signifying, according to Crowley, the shrill scream of orgasm or the metaphysical ecstasy that accompanies congress with non-human entities. This shows undoubtedly the connection between the Curlicell and the zero-point energy field which the early Vril Society, a subset of the Thule Society, were working on at least as far back as the late 1800s. As a battery of limitless potential, the Curlicell is basically a form of the Vril or Vril light force. Uriel is rendered as Vril via U being essentially Vav and E being He, but in its original Hebrew form, it is Oriel, with an Aleph Vav, which means God is my light, again referencing the or light. This light is the Azoth, astrolight, Chi, Ohos, etc., that tenuous substance which cannot be measured with conventional means, but nonetheless can be encountered and worked with internally if the vessel is finely tuned enough through alchemical and mystical exercise. Basically being able to see the clear light. Hrilyu has similar undertones as it has been defined as the very fabric of existence, the currents of energy that are luminous and void, and metaphysical ecstasy, see Words of Power. This is ecstasis itself, which literally means to be or stand outside oneself, a removal to elsewhere. From ek, out, and stasis, a stand or a standoff of forces. And again, the whole concept of the krill or Curlicell, is this whole idea of, it connects to Kaphnia, and Kaphnia being, again, this outward or backwards eye, the eye of the 0 point, into, and basically the Kurla cell being this sort of like dream cell, and or what I think of as this idea of a dream cell, a gateway to other, I guess you could say, dimensions through the Kaphnia. But I know this whole concept is out there and strange, but it is, to me, it's pretty interesting to look at and again see that someone or other people have actually kind of delved into this subject matter. Concerning the contact with non-terrestrial entities, further analysis of the Kabbalistic weight of Kurla shows that 251 is also the number of Anadotus, the repulsive one associated with Oans, god of the deep. Rimu, the city of fish mentioned in the Book of the Dead, and Asadagawa mentioned in the Derleth recension of the Necronomicon Gnosis, as the parent of a frightful spirit as came down from ye stars. See the lurker at the threshold. 251 is also coincidentally the number of alien abduction as well as alien contactee. This shows the undeniable position of this number as a key of the outer ones. Grant also goes on to note that Kurla, rendered with a kaf instead of kaf, brings it to 331, the number of allos, other or alien in Greek, which I also have enumerating alien visitation, a war engine, the double-wanded one, and Bachata Aish, or man of sin. Grant also mentions that in Lamaism, the Buddhism of Tibet by Lawrence Waddell, there is mention that it was in year 331 AD, there fell from heaven several sacred objects, including the Om Mani formula inscribed on a stone, probably the Chintamani stone or wish-fulfilling talisman mentioned in ancient Sanskrit works. He goes on to say, this formula of the jewel in the lotus describes the cosmic vibration which stimulates the Sri Chakra to flower in the fullness of total manifestation. 331 is the number of Shal, or Shin Aleph Lamed, a chink in the ground, a crack or crevice, which may be compared with Sheol, Hell, and Shayak, also 331, the Aramaic form of the Sanskrit Patala, or Hell. Shal, or Shin Aleph Lamed, is the orifice whence the oracle proceeded, as at Delphi, Dodona, etc., or the crack in the cosmic egg. Kurla thus suggests the deep ones, the oracle, and the power zone of the Kala circle described by the Sri Chakra. Thus, the bottomless pit, or the abyss, is both within, infernal, and without, supernal, or whichever way you want to view the termina. The jewel in the lotus can be thought of as the interplay of Hadit, the jewel, and Nuit, the lotus, and Glyph is the dot in the circle. The jewel, or Mani, is the stone, and the lotus, or Padme, is also termed by Freder Achad as the Mani-O, coterminous with the Ma-Ion, the ends of manifestation. The ends of manifestation are the inner and outer nodes, which when united dissolve the limitations of differentiation, and become the singular and total being that cannot be numbered or symbolized. The Kurla cell is thus the awakened and reborn spiritual light, naturally alien or other in respect to its mundane original form. This can be confused with other others, but to adequately communicate with such others, the true self must first be attained. This is why it is imperative that the initiate reaches the level of Tifereth, or soul, and achieves knowledge and conversation with one's holy guardian angel or higher self, before invoking or evoking entities such as the Goetia, for until then the initiate is a shell in which such initiates can infiltrate and take hold. This, or the Kurla cell, is the 17th kala, which has no distinction. 17 is also the number of units in the swastika, the symbolic form of the whirling motion of creation, also used by the Vril and Nazi occultists in their vying for finding this whole power to again weaponize it. In the glossary of Beyond the Mauve Zone, Grant mentions the 17th kala. Kala, Sanskrit, time, period, section, or part, the substance that reifies and sets limits, the process of conceptualization. There are 15 kalas of the lunar cycle which culminate in Sodashi, the 16th and secret secretion. There is a further or 17th kala that pertains to the eon of Zain. It is inexpressible in verbal form. As has been stated in The Color of Time, the word kala is a division of space-time, and is closely connected with the words color and calendar. The kalas of the swastika imply the wheel of time, or in terms of the tarot, the wheel of fortune. And this is important because remember that Korlo means wheel or cycle. It is further relevant that the word circle itself also equals 251. Note also that the same number for Korlo, 395, is that of Sarva Mandala, which is the great golden egg from which the creator deity Brahma was born. Sarva Mandala, Sanskrit, Sarva Mandala from Sarva, all, complete, Mandala, globe, orb, the complete globe or orb, hence the egg of Brahma or the universe, applicable to any of the numerous eggs of Brahma, whether a galaxy, sun, planet, or even a nebula or comet. Crowley in Liber 777 also notes that the Hebrew chavag, or cheth vav gimel, which means circle or orbit, equals 17. It is within these paradoxical and seemingly unattainable and incomprehensible vistas that the true essence of magic and God itself is to be found, and that is why I am working to better explain such concepts. Outside the boundaries of the limitations, indeed outside the box, are where the real treasure lies. I have noted previously how the X and the O is a symbol for not only the mark of the beast, but also the entrance to the inner realm of the temple, also the inner order. As the symbol for Terra, the circle, Malkuth, the X, or plus sign, i.e. the cross or Tau, marks the spot where the treasure lies, as Kether resides in Malkuth and vice versa. This symbol is the unbroken or unopened swastika itself. The word swastika comes from the Sanskrit svastika, su meaning good or auspicious, asti meaning to be, and ka as a suffix. The swastika literally means to be good, or another translation can be made swa is higher self, asti meaning being, and ka as a suffix, so the translation can be interpreted as being with higher self. Thus, this is the original meaning of this symbol. The Nazis inverted its meaning for malevolent purposes. This symbol is very ancient and generally refers to the whirling motion of creation or life. The symbol of the Vril Society, however, was not so much the swastika as it was the black sun, which has similar connotations, although instead of being the wheel of light, it is the wheel of anti-light, antimatter, more correctly associated with the black hole. The wheel of fortune is Atu-X, the number of completion and totality. 10 is the one in the circle, and that it is the lingam and the yoni, or the phallus and Catius. There is an inner mystery here because the phallus and the Catius conceal the formula of Kaf, which this Atu is attributed. Kaf is Kaf and Pe, or K and P, and the wheel with its central axle is the dot in the circle. Kaf means hand or cup, or that which holds, and it is the wheel of Dharma, or Dharma chakra, that holds every distinct facet of being in its place. It is highly notable then that Dharma also equals 251. The number of Kaf in Hebrew is 820, with Kaf and Pe final, which is the number of Zaman, or Zin Mem Nun, time 747, with a nun final, plus Ha-Kalal, or space, 73, i.e. space-time. And again, that makes me think of Hillel, Lucifer. 820 is also the number of Hesphira, the sphere, which is the circle extended into another dimension. It is also the number of the sum of 1 through 40, 40 being the number of Mem, the waters of manifestation, or space. But I digress. The Kurla cell is not definitely defined in Beyond the Mauve Zone. It is only hinted at as being a formula for congress with extraterrestrials, but the methods are left obscure. In Peter Levenda's book, The Dark Lord, H.P. Lovecraft, Kenneth Grant, and the Typhonian Tradition in Magic, the Kurla cell is mentioned on page 302. The very word we use in the modern age for referring to otherworldly ideas, planes, levels, is astral, which means starry. It is the starry wisdom cult of Lovecraft's story, The Haunter of the Dark. We hear talk of the astral plane and the astral body, and rarely stop to consider what that means. It is the astral self that is indestructible, that is capable of doing the kind of time and space traveling that both Grant and Lovecraft describe, and entire cults were built around its cultivation and use. One of Grant's power zones, the Kurlasel, was designed with just that idea in mind. He describes it in Beyond the Mav Zone and tells of the intention of its members to contact Azathoth and Yog-Sothoth, both Lovecraftian entities, and to use psychosexual dynamics concealed in the Necronomicon. This group eventually identified the star Betelgeuse as the home of the Elder Gods, and a black hole somewhere in the constellation Sagittarius as the home of the Great Old Ones. He is effectively equating the Kurlasel with the form of the astral body. Analyzing the word as two separate words, Kur and La, or Kaf and Resh and Lamed Aleph, we see that Kur means know or be familiar, and La means not or nothing or absence, Nox. Therefore, Kurla can mean the knowledge of nothing, nothing being the 0 point or background of manifestation. Kur, or Kr, itself equals 220, the number of Librael, as well as Nephilim, the Great Old Ones, from whence Al was transmitted. La is 31, the key number of Librael. Thus, again, we see that this text is indeed forbidden wisdom, the wisdom from beyond or outside. In order to apprehend it, one must transcend oneself and become as God, by aligning and integrating all aspects of one's own being and taking the great step of standing beyond, within, without. Know that Al is one of the most ancient names for God. I have already discussed the broken circle in Dragon Blood, which is the formula of Shaitan or Satan, 359, but Grant mentions this formula in regards to the Kurlasel, which is important in this analysis. There are further links between the New Isis workings and those of the Kurlasel. The name Isis denotes a stone throne or seat. The name Shaitan or Shaitan is in fact our word stone, and Set has the meaning of a standing stone. The number of Satan or Shaitan, 359, is one less than the perfect or unbroken circle of 360 degrees. The formula of Shaitan therefore indicates the broken circle. See the Necronomicon, page 16. A broken line provides means of entrance for those outside. For a broken star is the gate of Ganzir, the gate of death, the gate of the shadows and the shells. And again, remember the 331, the crack or split. This is the formula par excellence of the Typhonian Gnosis because it permits of both ingress and egress of forces outside the circles of time. The mystery of the break in the circle is the mystery at the heart of the magic of the new eon, and it is manifested in blood, the outpouring of the circle, yoni or lotus, of the sacred plant that flowers only in moonlight. Evans notes that this fantastic plant is the legendary Mariposa, said to grow in Tibet. It is supposed to be a cure for the curse of lycanthropy. By Greek gematria, Mariposa equals 502, twice 251, or two Kurlasels linked, glossed by the equation 251 plus 251, on the fabled plateau of Lang. So the hole or opening in the circle is equated with Doth, the dot, as I also made apparent in my previous article. Ganzir is the gate of the shadows and the shells, according to the Necronomicon, and the gate that leads to the 7 steps into the frightful pit. And frightful is 666. And the shrieking of the god on the throne of darkness. The sum of the Tetractus, Kether 620, Chakma 73, Binah 67, and Doth 474, equals 1,234, the number of the Prince of Darkness, and Azrael, the Angel of Death. Note that Azrael is often connected with Uriel, and Azrael's name means the angel or help of God, or the one whom God helps. Ganzir equals 271, the number of Neru, Lux, and Or Naga, shining light. Being the gate of death or outrance and equal to the light, it can be thought of as the source beyond the 7 gates. Referring to a formula received by a priestess of the New Isis Lodge with a name of the same number, Grant states that Merla, or Marla, is 271, therefore glyphs the light of consciousness, Lux, shining in the darkness, or Nox, of the tunnels of Set. Relevant to this analysis of the Kurla formula and transmissions from beyond, Grant also mentions that Kurla was adumbrated in the workings of the New Isis Lodge, and even earlier, for in 1943 were received by Eosic the chronicles of Kral Nia. Kral Nia, or Krill Nia, as he has it in the Ninth Arch, was one of Grant's magical names as far back as 1939. It is then even more significant that there exists a ufological document known as the Krill Papers, which tells of an alleged extraterrestrial biological entity who gave its name as KRLL, or Krill, which stayed behind on Earth after a race of extraterrestrials met secretly with the United States government in the 60s. While it is pretty obvious that the text is a sham, some of the information it contains may be factual, and the name Krill itself is highly suspicious considering the foregoing material. Remember that Grant often references how works of fiction can sometimes, intentionally or unintentionally on the part of the author, contain gems of truth in them, the stories of Lovecraft being one of the best examples. Deeper analysis of this enigmatic chapter, we see Grant following up about Marla, or Merla. In the change from Chandra Bindu, representing the letter M to the letter K, the glyph of the goddess, may be seen the flowering of supreme potential into full manifestation. Frater Achad suggested that the first and last verses of Nuit's chapter in AL point directly at Ma-Ion, the lesser cycle of the Eon of Perfection ushered in 1948. Likewise, one end of Kurla is KR, the other La, whereas previously it had been MR and LA. The end is constant only when it is not La. It is plain, therefore, how the new Isis and Kurla cell workings have produced an operation formula for the manifestation at the end of an eon of the full Sri Chakra by the goddess whose Bija mantra is KRM, or Cream, i.e. Kali. The Evans-Keenan cell workings in the tunnel of Niantiel established contact with the old ones in the specific form of Kurlamkur. This formula has the numerical index of 511, or 93 plus 418, thereby revealing at its heart the 93 current and Iwas. 511 is the number of the cyclopean and many-colored Yehantle layer of the Deep Ones, the shadow over Innsmouth, Lovecraft, page 185. It is also the number of Hecate, a form of Hecate. Significantly, the number KR, or Ker, 220, plus Lam, 71, plus KR, 220, also equals 511, and thus exhibits the thread of continuity with the Book of the Law, thereby substantiating Crowley's claim that AL contains the supreme spells or spellings, as this it does for the four letters O, A, U, M, i.e. the Pranava and Greek Om, add up to 511, the number of Kurlamkur. Private communication dated December 15, 1990. As a final seal upon a remarkable chain of identities, Thomas Inman gives 511 as the value of Asenath, or Aleph Samek Nun Tau, which translates as dedicated to Neith, in ancient faiths embodied in ancient names. Note also that the K and the M, in Kurla or Karla and Merla or Marla, indicate the 60 stone, a potent talisman of the Tloth. See Outside the Circles of Time, page 215. These notions combine to demonstrate how the Kurla cell is founded upon the Typhonian Gnosis. This shows the connection between the Kurla cell and the entity, or if you prefer, Ophidian archetype, Lam. He goes on to say, the number 291, the number of Kurlam, and Mnar, Mnar being a Lovecraftian form of the Mav Zone, signifies Aretz, earth, of Malkuth, i.e. the plane of manifestation. The vibration of the earth seed mantra, Lam, again relating to Muladhara and Malkuth, Lam is the Bija mantra of the Muladhara chakra, the abode of the fire snake. Manifesting in the Muladhara chakra flashes from that chakra to the brain of the priestess functioning as the Kurla cell. This is the formula of the psychosexual dynamics concealed in the Necronomicon. Jeffrey Evans explains succinctly the role of the Kurla cell in the Typhonian complex. It seems clear to me that, in some mysterious way, 666, Crowley, HPL, Lovecraft, and Achad, Charles Stansfeld Jones, and 718, i.e. Easek Ewas, and now 481, Kefra Ma'ast, and certain others, notably the Dogon of Africa, have tuned into a current which is emanating from that region of the celestial sphere. My own pet theory at this point in my career is that it represents the rudiments of what will, in the future, be our, i.e. humanity's, link in the group of already existing telepathic life forms in the universe. Without the Typhonian tradition, such a link will be nigh impossible. For as long as we do not learn to think outside of ourselves and our own forms, as long as we continue to think in anthropomorphic terms, we will not be able to stand the influx of sheer aliveness which such telepathic contact necessarily implies. The region of the celestial sphere alluded to above is inclusive of the stars Pollux, Capella, Aldebaran, Rigel, Betelgeuse, Sothis, and Procyon. Grant mentions the letter M multiple times, noting its connection with the elder gods. The letter M, or Mem, the key vibration of the plane of the elder gods, is represented mythologically as the sea-goat, Makara, or as the crocodile, the beast of the waters. And the Kala of Ibit-al-Ghazi manifests directly the vibration symbolized by the letter M, which is the root vibration of the elder gods located in that star. The letter M is the Chandra Bindu, which literally means moon dot. It is the dot or bindu in the pranava Om. It is the nasally ng or ung sound vibration, and in its deepest aspect, the space that the door 4 leads to. Again, 4D or 4D. In the case of cosmic forces, another dimension. In relation to the mantra Cream mentioned above, Grant says, Cream is the bija mantra of the black goddess Kali, who grants liberation, Kaivalya. And the letter M, or Chandra Bindu, is the root mantra, equals 30. And he associates, again, Om with 30 being symbolic in a lot of ways, literally and figuratively. Even though M as Mem technically equals 40, the number 30 is here in its place for its similarity to Om, in the fact that M is the midway, the middle waters of balance which Lamed symbolizes, and also the 3 states which dissolve in the Turiya. Om is the dynamic formula of the Kurla cell, resulting from the application of restriction, the reflection of liberation, typified by the priestess in the bondage of the mummy swathings, the silence of the death posture or magical sleep, combined with the feminine Kureza. There is some confusion here, since Ibn Ghazi is the powder mentioned in the Necronomicon, which, when ignited, enables the old ones to manifest in the present universe, or Universe A, i.e. the waking state. The point is that we are dealing here with a particular form of magical manifestation, the vehicle of which being the Kurla cell. Thus, Grant says, the great old ones, the Ophidian counterparts of the elder gods, will manifest through the Kurla cell. Further on, Grant identifies Ibit-al-Ghazi with Betelgeuse, saying, according to Howard Phillips Lovecraft, Betelgeuse, or Ibit-al-Ghazi, is the home of the elder gods, and according to Evans, that star has decidedly become the focus of the Kurla cell. It should be known that the Arabic name for Betelgeuse is Ibit al-Jaza, often translated as armpit of the central one, but it is more correct as the arm of Orion, the giant. See etymology. Going on, Grant says, he, Evans, adds that the notion that there is a Kurla cell emanating from the region of Ibit al-Ghazi is not so far-fetched. This stellar complex is opposite a supposed black hole in Sagittarius, near the center of the galaxy, and Evans speculates that if Betelgeuse is the home of the elder gods, may not the black hole be the home of the old ones? Now that these two similar concepts, Ibn Ghazi and Ibit al-Ghazi, have been distinguished, we can go back to an important piece in this puzzle. It is therefore possible to understand how Jeffrey Evans has unveiled the inner meaning of AL chapter 1 verse 8 and 9. The cobs is in the coup, not the coup in the cobs. Worship then the cobs, and behold my light shed over you. The coup, or magical will, is the product, not the producer, of the sacred ash. This reveals an entirely new mode of magic, which is in precise alignment with New Isis and the doctrine of Mayat. Grant notes that the functioning of the Kurlasel chimes with Dali's sensation of wearing his own skeleton outside of him. This is interesting since he is saying that the Kurlasel is an inner rather than outer vehicle. I, myself, have had two significant magical experiences with a skeleton in my initiation. First, after having unintentionally chanced upon obtaining a copy of the book Liber Falcifer on the holy day of San La Muerte, August 15, 2011, I sought contact with the saint and had a vision of a large black skeleton which I seemed to be part of, as if I was within its empty womb. I see this to be a sign that I was indeed close to the patron saint of death. Numerous synchronicities regarding myself in the necrosophic death current have manifested throughout my life, and I find it highly significant that my very name, which both begins with the letter M, the 13th letter, and has 13 letters, enumerates to 1331. Second, while having an LSD experience around 2012, I had another vision that my bones were glowing neon and that my blood had congealed as if I were effectively dead but alive at the same time. Every thought I had and every second that passed became as a pump in the veins of the heartbeat of God or being, and space-time imploded into the eternal moment of all. It was quite an experience. Note that the Hebrew word for death is MT, or Mem Tau. Mut, or Muth, which is phonetically similar to Maat, the goddess presiding over the underworld and the souls awaiting judgment. Going back to the material in the letter M, I want to quote Blavatsky's The Secret Doctrine, because it is very interesting and should be of note here for many reasons. Remember that M is the Chandra Bindu, or moon dot, and that there are 13 lunations per year. The lotus and water are among the oldest symbols, and in their origin are purely Aryan, though they became common property during the branching off of the fifth rays. And again, look up the meaning of Aryan. It actually connects to the Middle East. Let us give an example. Letters, as much as numbers, were all mystic, whether in combination or each taken separately. The most sacred of all is the letter M. It is both feminine and masculine, or androgen, and is made to symbolize the water, the great deep, in its origin. It also relates to fire and the unification of the water and the fire. It is mystic in all the languages, Eastern and Western, and stands as a glyph for the waves, thus relating to the Aquarius symbol. In the Aryan esotericism, as in the Semitic, the letter has always stood for the waters, e.g. in Sanskrit, Makara, the 10th sign of the zodiac, means a crocodile, or rather an aquatic monster associated always with water. The letter Ma is equivalent to and corresponds with the number 5, composed of a binary, the symbol of two sexes separated, or of the ternary, symbol of the third life, the progeny of the binary. This, again, is often symbolized by a pentagon, the latter being a sacred sign, a divine monogram. Maitreya is the secret name of the fifth Buddha, and the Kalki Avatara of the Brahmins, the last Messiah who will come at the culmination of the great cycle. It is also the initial letter of the Greek Metis, or divine wisdom, of Memra, the word or logos, and of Mithras and Mathra, the monad and mystery. All these are born in and from the great deep, and are the sons of Maya, the mother, in Egypt, Mut, in Greece, Minerva, divine wisdom, or Mary or Miriam, Mura, etc., the mother of the Christian Logos, and of Maya, the mother of Buddha. Madhava and Madhavi are the titles of the most important gods and goddesses of the Hindu pantheon. Finally, Mandala is in Sanskrit a circle, or an orb, the 10 divisions of the Rig Veda. The most sacred names in India begin with this letter generally, from Mahat, the first manifested intellect, and Mandara, the great mountain used by the gods to churn the ocean, down to Mandakini, the heavenly Ganga or Ganges, Manu, etc., etc. M is the formula of manifestation, and when consciously directed under will becomes a formula of magic. The magical numbers of the agents which denote the terrestrial operators of the Kurlasel are Freighter 481, Jeffrey Evans, and Soror 352, Ruth Keenan. 481 equals Ibit al-Ghazi, Betelgeuse, and 352, Al-Halda, Sagittarius. 352 is the number of Tana in Greek, and the leaves of which plant revive the mummy in Amenta. The mummy or Kurlasel is thereby equated with the black hole, or in Kamite terms, with Amenta. The center of the galaxy ecliptically is toward Sagittarius. Sagittarius is opposite Gemini. And as Ibit al-Ghazi is the home of the elder gods, may not the home of the old ones be located somewhere in the region of Sagittarius? Perhaps the black hole itself is a gateway to the home of the old ones. This would mean that beyond the black hole, or within it, lies Ubo Sathla, that unforgotten source whence came those daring to oppose the elder gods who ruled in Betelgeuse. Evans identifies Ubo Sathla as a glyph for the center of our own galaxy, and its hidden door to our own forgotten source. Out of what we have come, into that shall we return at the time of Maha Pralaya, the Aeon of Zain, when Shakti assumes the form of Bindu. In the Necronomicon mythos, Ubo Sathla is described as the source of the forces that fought against the elder gods, who ruled from Betelgeuse. These forces, the great old ones, were directed by Azathoth and Yog-Sothoth. Jeffrey Evans declares that the Kurlasel working shows a definite orientation perpendicular to the axis of the Earth, toward Ibit al-Ghazi at first, and now toward the galactic center. This creates the effect of the Earth as a spinning cross, and when facing west, or contra the direction of the elliptical constellations, the pole star is on the right hand, and on the left hand is the black void of space around which the circle Canopus and Sothis, the southern pole stars. It is as though a link has been made between Ubo Sathla and Ibit al-Ghazi, and it seems that the Kurlasel needed to make contact with the Old Ones through the Elder Gods at first, before making direct contact with the Old Ones themselves. Evans states categorically that the formula of the Kurlasel, the function of which is to serve as a vehicle of communion between worlds, takes the formula of Kur, Lam, Kur. This is interesting, considering Lam is said to be the link between the eons of Horus and Maat. Horus is the Lord of War, and being a large red star, and being a part of Orion the warrior, it resumes the martial aspect. On the other hand, and outside the circles of time, Nema is quoted as equating Maat with the black hole. The ancient Egyptians also revered Orion, as can be seen by the alignment of the pyramids of Giza with Orion's belt, and the name of the city Cairo itself means Mars. The black hole, being equated with Amenta, or the place of the dead, is then rightly aligned with Maat, who resides there with her weightless feather of truth. Thus, the operation of the cell by the Old Ones and their agents comports a sexual formula for the entifying of Lam, or the embodiment of Lam in the Aeon of Zain. In order to explain this formula, it is necessary to place on record that an agent of the Great Old Ones known as Kur-al-Nia-Z, an avatar of Aosic, initiated the current of Zain in 1939, e.v. when the present author adopted the magical name Kral-Nia-Z. This name was taken spontaneously as a nom de plume in connection with a novel he was writing in his teens. The Kurlasel, the ALLA Horus Set current, and the Aeon of Zain are all explicit in the name Kral-Nia-Z. A profoundly subtle cosmic telepathy from future time therefore occurred in connection with this initiation. It is perfectly in order, therefore, that in another context Jeffrey Evans has explained why an Aeon of Silence, Zain Ion, was needed before the full flowering of this interstellar contact could be achieved. The being, Lam, is an avatar of silence, or in the Aeon of Zain, and Kral-Nia-Z was its reflex in a temporal and mundane context. Another personal addition to this lineage are all the subtle hints I have hitherto made about my own position in this chain. The year 1992, in which I was born, was 44 years after the incoming of the Aeon of Maat, which itself was 44 years after the inauguration of the Aeon of Horus. 44 is the number of Shaval, the phoenix, and 88 is the number of Kobs, the star. My initiation into the Draconian Mysteries began in 2011 with the reception of a talisman of Ma-Ion in the form of an obsidian egg precisely on April 2nd, 107 years since 1904, the year of the Aeon of Horus, and 63 years since 1948. 107 is the number of Ma-Ion, the Hebrew bitzah, or egg, oval from Al chapter 2, verse 76, and 76 plus Al, or 31. My initials are MAL, the reflex or terrestrial manifestation of Lamb. Additionally, my name in Greek Kabbalah is 481 as well. This leads me to wonder if my magical work was adumbrated far before I was even born, and if perhaps I myself am a modern avatar for the same current those before have been the vessels of. My work will speak for itself. The date, April 2nd, or April 2, comes up again in this chapter in regard to Mr. Evans as well. A curious connection exists between the chronologies of the Kurlasel workings and the inception of the Eon of Maat in its lesser or daughter cycle of Ma'ayan, as announced by Frater Achad on April 2nd of 1948. The date which Evans gives for this magical impregnation by influences from outside is April 2nd, 1984. This also dates his focusing on Halley's Comet. He later realized that in the year 1948, that comet reversed its direction just as Achad had reversed the direction of the paths. It is surely significant that the difference between 48 and 84, another reversal, 36, yields as 3 times 6 the number of Isis in the female pentagram. Note the many instances of reversals, the supreme formula of the dual one. Of great importance in this analysis is that Grant mentions the significance of phi, which can be seen here as another form of the phallus and yoni. The phi proportion or golden mean is found all throughout nature and manifests from the 0-point center of creation. In the Evans-Keenan cult, the Greek letter phi, value 500, denotes the Kurla current. Phi is special among numbers for its reflex is -1, the I or ego. The full numeration of phi, i.e. the letter name phi, phi and iota, phi is the basis of the square root of 5, the number most closely related to the great old ones. Again, phi, iota, it's 510, a value of 10n, Draco, the sea monster or serpent which gives its name to the Ophidian current. It is also the number of Chronos in Greek, the alchemical elus or primal slime which forms the basis of the great work. It is the chaos out of which arises the astral shadow of Horus, the shadow twin Set, whose name is one with the seat or foundation Yesod of the Tree of Life. Set is identical with Isis, of whom he is the child or manifestation in the realm of Amenta. Al chapter 3 verse 74 declares, "The son of midnight is ever the sun." In the midnight sun is Kephra, Evans, whose motto is Kephra Ma'ast, i.e. that which comes into being out of Ast or Isis, and who copulates with his own shadow in order to create, writes, "Like Kephra, I have produced an astral shade with which to unite for creation." He thus assumes the god form of the beetle that is recurrently born of Isis to create another day. Of note here is that 510 is the number of Iskios, shadow or shade, and Nyx, the god of night, as well as star and astronomy, as well as the Hebrew word for dream or vision, and the Kurla gnosis. This essentially shows the stellar nature of this tradition, and the truly ageless wisdom that is ever present if one could but see it. The formula of Kephra, the scarab in Atu 18, the moon, is that of seeing in the dark, and is subsumed under the Hebrew letter Kaf, meaning back of the head. Kepra is Kaf, Pe, Resh, Aleph, is 301, the number of Selene in Greek, Selene the moon, as well as astral, Yog Sothoth, and Aosic. 301 is also ash, or fire. Kephra symbolizes the renewal of the light, and thus the immortal soul. But it also symbolizes the shells, and shell and soul are related. The cyclical terrestrial, lunar, and solar cycles must be shown against the background of the stellar cycles, the eons of the great old ones, for their full manifestation to be seen in the light of their place amongst the infinite expanse of the Queen of Night, Our Lady Nuit. So basically, again, relativity. In concert with the formula of Kephra Ma'ast and the shadow Set, Evans suggests that the mysterious cipher contained in Al chapter 2 verse 76 may be the veritable formula for giving birth to a star child. It should be evident from the material presented in these trilogies that Crowley, Ledbetter, Parsons, Evans, and others, known and unknown, have been attempting to utilize such a formula. The inevitable question is surely, has such a magical child been brought to birth within the current eon? Crowley may not have failed, for the star envisaged by Cameron Parsons, see Hecate's Fountain, 1992, Part 1, Chapter 3, yet struggles in the birth pains of an eon that is nameless, perhaps because the child of its bowels has not yet emerged. Perhaps Evans, Nema, and others are laboring to bring forth not a single entity, but a composite stellar complex of powers, such as Lovecraft may have glimpsed in the shadowy gulfs of Dream. The great old ones, the deep ones, the outer ones, may not they be entities or gods, such as those described by Crowley as certain vast stars or aggregates of experience? See the introduction to the Book of the Law, Crowley, OTO, London, 1938. See also Liber Portolucius. When all of this is fathomed and comprehended, it becomes apparent that something of vast cosmic proportions has been and is going on, and this planet is not quite as insignificant as we are so often led to believe. Something so monumental that very few will have the requisite degree of psycho-spiritual compatibility to not only to carry forward the lineage, but even to withstand the implications this knowledge brings. See, yeah, I know, that was a long-winded, unfinished sentence, but humanity at large is incapable even of withstanding its own baggage, so to speak. So something of this magnitude is necessarily left to those special individuals which have taken it up as their duty to carry the weight. The crumbling of society and its environmental impact on the planet are all a part of the influx of energies that we have, in some cases, blindly evoked. The only reprisal for those with any inkling of an ability to withstand such effects is to become aware of their innate abilities, and renew contact with their holy guardian angel or higher self in each incarnation in order to maintain continuity of magical consciousness in the waking state. See Beyond the Mauve Zone, page 145. Only then can the true heirs rightly take back control over the guidance of humanity and push us back towards a state of benevolent harmony with nature. Every man and every woman is a star. Liber AL, chapter 1, verse 3.
Our order possesses the key, which opens up all Masonic and Hermetic secrets, namely, the teaching of sexual magic, and this teaching explains, without exception, all the secrets of nature, and the symbolism of Freemasonry, and all systems of religion.